there's no couple you could find that is more pessimistic than this couple. No, I'm joking. So there's no one can fill our shoes. Greetings. Hey, guys. Great to see you back. Great to be back.
You're back. Yeah, we've been here waiting for you this whole time.
Yeah, no, I know. And hopefully, if the tech gods aligned, you guys just heard our awesome new jingle. So, yeah, let everyone's grooving.
We almost hired another couple while you guys were gone.
We needed a duet, but we went with just a female because tech is so male-dominated anyways. We're trying to change the ratio.
There's no couple you could find that is more pessimistic than this couple. No, I'm joking. So there's no one can fill our shoes. Well, welcome to our listeners. We are excited for another week of More or Less, the podcast that takes you inside the most important debates happening in tech and actually literally debates them. So we are thrilled. A shout out to our growing number of listeners out there, to our awesome back channel that's keeping us on our toes with great topics every week. And we've got a full plate. So I am here with Mr. Sam Lessin, a day shy of 40. So everyone,
2 days shy of 40.
Wait, how long has Sam been turning 40?
This podcast will be live on his birthday. So everyone in the comments, give us a love, give us a 5-star review.
5 stars for Sam.
And give us 40 stars, and not looking 40. Looking good, Sam, looking good. We've got peptides. Mr. Dave Morin, who I'm sad to hear had a slip and ended up in the ER this week, and Mr. Always handy around the house fixing his van, but he is okay. We're glad to see you in fine form, Dave. Dave the Tinkerer.
He's also well over 40, but wearing the hat of a 12-year-old.
It's true. We, you guys went to Wimbledon last week, and we went to Dude Perfect. Yeah. That kind of says it all. Oh yeah, there you go, Jess.
If people don't know Dude Perfect, it is like the coolest YouTube channel with 60 million subscribers of like 5 guys from my home state of Texas who do really cool stunts and things. So check it out.
Well, we had strawberries, so
I've been watching that line since he was 1.
And then last but not least, we're here with Britt Morin, who is feeling pretty smart right now because she has predicted an uptick in M&A and IPO activity again, and we may be seeing that. Actually, we had the Oddity IPO today. You guys know Oddity? This one was a new one to me, but it's a e-commerce company that's basically built off the back of TikTok, believe it or not, and the success of TikTok. So
what does it do?
It's more to come.
Yeah, it helps. It literally facilitates commerce around, sales on TikTok and not directly, more like products that get big because of TikTok. So,
I see.
That's for testing the waters.
Sell. If you have Oddity shares, sell.
Goodness gracious. I know we're getting that.
As is anything built on the back of TikTok, as soon as it peaks, sell immediately.
Okay. Well, here's our agenda. Okay. We're going to keep it tight for all. Thanks to everyone for the feedback. The 9,000 people who have told us how to record a podcast. I want to do a quick Threads recap because when we left, Threads was not yet live. And so we got to look back where we right or wrong in some of our predictions on how the platform will evolve. But of course, the big topic of the day is really going to be this AI moment on so many dimensions, the technology, the investing. I think the bloom is kind of off the rose, guys, a little bit. So we'll unpack that for everyone and wrap with some thoughts. But let's start with Threads. Brett, you had a vision for Threads. What do you think so far? And what's your take?
Well, it's interesting. Before we actually launched our first live episode, we did a couple practice episodes, and I was telling this crowd that I was like hyped on it. I think it could work, and in particular, Sam was not. And
wait, I was not hyped on Threads. I definitely was. Wait a minute.
I think you reversed course in the live episode, but in the practice episode. you weren't. So I don't. Anyway, but so then we launched. We recorded this episode about Threads the day before it launched, and we were like, okay, we think this is going to be good. And then it was like 5 days to 100 million users, fastest growing app to 100 million users, yada yada yada. Everyone we know at Meta was like celebrating, and I was feeling really good about my predictions, but now I'm just questioning, and they haven't released engagement stats, I don't think, but
tens of millions of daily active. Which
to me, whenever anyone says tens of millions, I only go to
21.
20. It's 20.
It's 21.
It's 20 on the dot, maybe 19.8. So they're like retaining 20% of their.
I mean, guys, 20 million
users.
DAU is not trivial.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
But I'm still bullish.
There's an IPO right there.
I'm bullish on Threads. I think they're just beginning. I think they've got a lot of work to do to keep people engaged and reminding them to come back, but they have Instagram to do that with. So I'm still pro Threads.
I'm very pro Threads. I think it's great. I think it was a hell of a successful launch. And you can just kind of go down the lines of all the amazing things I think the team pulled off in terms of getting it right and actually not overbuilding it. I will say my big comment on it right now is I'm not exactly sure what to post to it. Because what the algorithm wants and then what the community wants from an engagement perspective, I'm kind of like all over the map because I'm trying to figure it out. Like I know what my audience is on Twitter. I know what my audience is on Instagram. I know it's very easy to model. When you dump 100 million people into a new experience without building it organically, that's the big question. And I will say that I think this is one thing we like to shit on TikTok, but one thing TikTok did very well, I think early on, is through a bunch of contests and discover and post a silly video of this fucking meme or whatever. They did teach people that were engaged in the platform. They told them exactly what to post and what they wanted. And
did they teach or was that emergent? It was sort of emergent.
I mean, they definitely
format.
promoted the shit out of it. I don't know if it was emergent from day one, but they absolutely would just be like, everyone.
Well, they were unique about music, right? They had a music, they started as Musical.ly. And so they had a unique access to music libraries and the underlying music
but my
dynamic.
Sense is, at least in their early US rapid growth phase when it was really starting to work, they were super explicit about these are the contests to go do. These are the things like that. Yeah, and I think that's going to be the interesting editorial function that is missing in Threads right now is if you're going to just open up a huge new canvas for people, you do need to create some sort of coalescing, which kind of gives some people a peek behind what the people in the algorithm want in order to get it to be sticky and grow. And I think right now it's kind of all over the map. Right now, I actually think the team will solve this. This is not a problem Facebook is new to. If you think about the history of a lot of the products they've rolled out, stories, reels, whatever, they're pretty good at being okay, we're adopting something, we're bringing it over. Let's train people up on it. It starts out being a bunch of derivative stuff and they eventually win. So I think they will win, but I think that's the point we're at. And they're going to have to move quickly, I think, despite the fact, again, fabulous launch.
I think I don't know, the whole comparison to stories and reels bothers me a little bit because they're not the same thing, right? Booting up a new network with an entirely new interface versus a new, I don't know how you think about stories and reels. It's a new feature of a prior network is kind of different. I know there's some behavioral things you have to train people on, but I guess the thing that I'm focused on, Sam, I agree with you. The audience discovery is extremely hard. I was thinking about it through a different lens, which is writer's block. I experienced this thing where right when it first took off, it was really delightful. There was a lot of new discovery of people, new voices that I hadn't seen before. And I think that's a very exciting thing at the beginning of social networks. Clubhouse went through this. Every network goes through this, right? But the speed at which Threads burned through that new discovery period of this emergent community dynamic feels a little bit I don't want to call it a bummer, but it's I said on Threads, it's something worth fighting for. But at the same time, I go and I open it now and I have the same writer's block that you're describing. I don't know what to write. I don't know who the audience is. I don't know what we're talking about here. And I don't actually want that to come off as negative towards the people building this. It's really difficult to get this right. I mean, I spent a lot of years of my life building these networks too, and it's really, really hard. I'm more curious in the intellectual, like, what is it? What is that je ne sais quoi thing that when a network feels right, you intuitively know exactly what to say? It's an interesting problem.
I never know what to say on any network, but you call it a social network. Is it a social network? I mean,
yes.
People there refer to it as TikTok for text. I mean, so TikTok is not a social network. Like, it's using random, it's algorithmically trying to put stuff in front of you, some of which is from people you know. But like, I like the product. I think it's really impressive what they've done. I am worried that this product will not be for Jessica because I'm not funny. And I think what ultimately is gonna I
think you're funny, Jess.
Thanks. But I think what is gonna work is entertainment, humor, cleverness, that kind of clear.
I don't know. I think so. The interesting experience I had, I actually felt like when Threads first few days, the real magic to it was like, oh fuck, Facebook statuses work again.
Totally.
Right? Like, it was like, oh shit, like these are all these people from that I actually love to talk to, and I love, they're kind of the distant friends. And because of Facebook's algorithms, you have not been able to get anyone to engage with a status update in years. Yep. Right? And I was like, oh shit, this is a new canvas, which is text oriented.
Doesn't Instagram now have status updates?
Yeah, but they're for young people, and they're weird. Count. They're not for our generation. And so I was like,
too many emojis.
There are so many people I love that I hadn't heard from because they're not my closest friends, but I do really like them from the last. But they follow me on Instagram. We follow each other. You're kind of casually aware. You don't see much from them. That lit up for a second, and there's all these great conversations. It really felt I was my only concern was oh my god, this is gonna cannibalize Facebook, right? Because it's all this great content is coming in here from that. Now that to
Isn't that kind of the point?
Well, it's very different than TikTok for text.
Yeah, right? I agree with that.
I actually, we'll see. These things will bake out. People will figure out what it is and what the audience is, whatever. I actually think
if that's how they're framing it internally, they need to stop.
Well,
I don't think that's the product mandate, right? But that, that's come up. I
think that TikTok for text is very difficult if that is the framing. And I'll tell you why. Because it's text is just not as fucking funny people hurting themselves in videos.
It's true.
Right. Because I could do that and be funny.
Yeah. See, Jess, you don't have to do that. Wait, I want to know what who's everyone's favorite person to follow on Threads so far, or a thing they learned, or
Well, my favorite person on Threads, I'll be really, it's obvious, and this goes without lighting it up. Dustin Moskovitz.
Me too. That's what I was going to say. You know what I learned about the 20-minute nap? I learned about the 20-minute nap.
Dustin's always active on Twitter. But Dustin, he is not known as the world's most positive human, and he's
not funny.
In the lesson camp.
But you know what? Dustin doesn't get enough credit for how much his conversational style and the way he views the world drove early Facebook. I mean, I remember his internally at Facebook early on. He was a prolific poster like this, and it's actually giving me really nostalgic vibes to the internal systems we had at Facebook in the early days.
Because he's fucking euphoric, right? He was I've never seen the man so happy about my favorite was when he went on a missive about how much he loved the plus button on people's faces. And it's I've never seen anyone so positive on a product. I think, and I get it from his perspective and for a whole bunch of other cultural and social reasons. But to me, that was the magic is unlocking people who have been locked up. Right? It's not necessarily, or blocked up on a certain type of content. It's not necessarily the dude.
But even that, in that model, Dustin is a mini celebrity influencer who his friends are enjoying content and circles outside of it enjoying content is very different from really a social network, right? Because there are other people like that who are loose ties. And I think those are going to emerge as the stars. I mean, I think it's telling, and then we'll do final thoughts on Threads recap. That internally they do think of it as a creator platform more than a social network, right? I mean, the messaging around it from Adam and everyone else is really around to the creators. Now, that's a little bit of the sort of Instagram overarching priorities right now too, but I think it's really interesting. So I'm going to say I think it's going to be a major force as a consumer product, but not in the way we think. And I think it actually leaves more territory open for Twitter than maybe some people think.
Well, that we did say before it launched, which is it's going to be really successful. And I was calling in hour one that it was going to be the fastest to 100 million. I mean, I think a lot of us saw it as a freight train. But in that episode, and I've said it online a bunch, is the idea that's going to kill Twitter is not true. Like they're going to coexist and like they're different.
And I think that all the actors and writers in Hollywood that are sitting at home right now might go on Threads and like build their empires there. So,
well, that Facebook would love that.
I have one final meta thought, which is, oh, that's a funny pun. Which is that I think that there's two things happening on the internet which are unfortunate compared to the past of the internet. One of them is that we are shifting from a hyperlink, network associated browsing pattern to a linear storytelling pattern. There's so much more linear video, linear feeds. It's like you're not really in this like curiosity driven conversational style in the internet anymore. And I think that's unfortunate. Like we didn't build the internet in order to create TV. And internet is going more and more TV, and I think that's unfortunate. And so what I guess got excited about Threads related to is similar to what you were saying, Sam, related to status, but even more so related to conversation, right? Like the internet as conversation to me was the reason I fell in love with the internet in the first place. And I think that's like a lot why you saw many of the people from the earliest days of the internet getting very excited about Threads as it came out the gate. And as a format, it's a very different format than just replying and stuff. Like it's a threaded conversational format, which to me is the great power of the internet at its best. And so I hope that regardless of whether it's creators or us or whoever using it, that they do think about it that way internally there, that like what they're doing has real power in the roots of the internet as a conversational medium.
Conversations just move to groups on the internet. Still, I think conversation is more alive and well. It just isn't happening, through public web pages. But great heady thought to end that segment on, Dave. Thank you. Okay, so we have to talk about AI. A couple of interesting things have happened over the last 2 weeks, I would say. One, most recently, Facebook released its big open source large language model Llama, or the next version of it, and partnered with all the big cloud providers to get it out there. A lot of people are talking about what that means for OpenAI, what open source competition means. There's also been a lot of scrutiny of the latest models themselves, what they're good at, what they're not. So we've got this sort of technology facing more pressure under scrutiny. We're seeing a lot of interesting discussion around, now that these models have been out there more, what is it doing to content? What is it doing to the quality of content on the internet? We've got a huge Hollywood strike that is anchored very much in the impact on content creators. So it feels like we've shifted into another phase of the impact of this and around content. And then also I'm sitting here with three investors. The debate kind of rages on around who's going to make money investing in AI. The Information had a story this week about NVIDIA doing yet another strategic investment in an AI startup, bringing it, I think, to about 8 in recent months, and sort of fanning more concern that this is really something that's going to benefit the incumbents. So 3 kind of jump balls, but under the headline of like, is the bloom off the rose a little bit here with AI? Like, what's going on? Britt, let's start with you.
I've been paying, obviously, a lot of attention to the content part of this, having run a content company for many years. And I think it's a really a serious deal. This is the first time in 50 or 60 years that the actors have been on strike, especially in parallel with the writers. And, I don't see that we're going to come to a quick regulatory agreement on this. I think this could waffle for a bit, and I'm nervous about what that means for a lot of. I think the actors and writers also need paychecks, and so I'm curious how that's gonna work out. That's what I meant about Threads influencers. Maybe they'll take some branded content deals, but anyway, I do know that if they just push this to the side, it's going to truly impact their work. However, I was talking to Dave about this last night on our date night. These are the things we talk about. And we were talking about
I have thoughts.
Does AI just become a branch of content scripted and reality, and like there's different types of segments of content that you watch, and if you're in the mood for a reality show, you might go into that, or if you really want a drama or a comedy or a movie or a short show, and so you know what you're expecting to get, and it's just one form of creativity. And I think that's probably likely to be the case. And I think that, I do think like written content is going to be much different than like screen content, like actors that are generated through AI. However, we have this interesting back channel group with some really notable actors. And one of them was telling us that like Disney technically owns his voice. And because he shot a movie with Disney
that's not true.
many years
ago. They own
ago.
enough of his voice that they could train a model.
Right. Yeah. They could train a model with his voice. And so even though he has rights around his appearance, his name and likeness, they could train a model on voice because, again, no one owns voice. And I come back to the fact that voice is this like huge, gnarly topic that really needs some framework around it really soon.
Yeah, I have my opinion here on this specific topic is pretty strong. I think the actors and the writers are doing the exact right thing. And I don't think they should stop until the copyright law is changed. Because I think that being able to submit your voice, your name, less about name and likeness, but your AI, whatever we're going to call it, your AI twin, your scanned AI version of you, like this needs to be a thing that is copyrightable. And, I was sitting with a senator who stopped by our office on Monday, and this senator asked me my opinion about this. And that was my straight up opinion that we need to figure this out. This might be one of the first times in a very long time that we should take a hard square look at copyright law. And if I'm the actors, like I know there's other things tied up in this, like streaming residuals and, renegotiating the labor contract in Hollywood. But I do think a big piece of this is this AI question. And I think that they shouldn't stop until there's movement on this. And we all have something to worry about with this, right? Like we're creating enough voice every single day that this could happen to us. This senator was saying to me, like, I've got to worry about this. Like somebody might use an AI version of me in the 1 week before the election and could really cause a problem.
Yeah,
I want to hear Sam's point of view on this. I say knowing Sam's point of view on this, but I also think we have to remember that right now the AI companies are living in this no man's land. They are arguing they have the right to do things, but that is very much an open question. So
exactly,
it could be like we need new copyright laws. We just also could need the clarity that the existing copyright laws exist, right? So I mean, I think
that's
this
true,
is one of the
but
things.
There is no real precedent for submitting. There's a great TED talk by one of the AI company founders where he talks about submitting a three-dimensional scan of himself to the Copyright Office, trying to get copyright for this, and it's it's still very unclear whether or not you can do this. And so,
shouldn't your parents own that? I mean, they contributed the code.
Sure.
Okay, Sam,
until
take
you're
it
18.
away.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, there's a lot of topics to take away. I'll start with just my favorite topic, which is porn. Like, so.
For anyone not watching the video right now, you should. I'm just going to put that up.
So here's the deal. All right. I mean, there's a bunch of AI porn. Everyone thinks AI porn is going to be a thing. My personal perspective is it's getting really boring really fast, right? Because it just turns out that, like, it's just like anime on steroids.
I didn't know that, Sam. We're going to need to put this in the show notes.
What's your favorite AI porn site, Sam?
I don't actually know, but I'm in some Discord channel that's like a AI, one of these like AI it's like Midjourney with no rules, and people just post porn in it constantly, and like it's just so repetitive. And like, so my basic view is that I think like there's this thing, and people are saying this about AI content in general.
But this is AI in general, right?
Well, it's getting really boring really fast.
Yes,
it's like,
this is AI in general.
So it's just like, but I think porn's always the tip of the spear in terms of how you think about this stuff. And so like, question one is like, is everyone just going to watch AI porn and not real actors? And I think there's a spectrum between like, okay, is there some really weird, fucked up niche that people filter into of like some super strange porn? And like, my initial reaction was probably yes. Like, weird shit goes in weirder directions.
But doesn't that already happen? The whole
it does. But the question
there's whole genres of cartoon stuff, right? That you look at all the data reports.
If the cost of producing weird ass porn goes to zero, do you just get it and that's the direction it heads in super weird niches? And I think the answer is yes, that does happen. But everyone's going to get super bored of it. And then on the other end of the spectrum, you have really, really dystopic shit, right? Like reality TV, where the point of it is that it's real people. What's that show in Japan where the shape comes at humans and they have to make the shape or they get pushed into the water? You know what I'm talking about?
No.
It's awesome. They have these people.
Jess, how does he know about this stuff?
Yeah, what do you do in your
so much of this is news to me.
Japanese reality TV, it sounds like.
So it's this great thing where you have to there's a model of a cutout of a human and this wall comes at the person and the person has to be in the shape of the wall or they get pushed into the water by the shape.
Is this like
sounds
a Squid Game
the new Silicon
off?
Valley offsite. Yeah.
It's great. The point is that this is the other extreme where this is incredibly boring except for the fact that it's real people, right? And so the thing that's really interesting about this fantasy to reality spectrum and what people are going to be talk about specifically the entertainment side of this, not the information or deepfakes or all this other stuff. It's just what do people give a shit about and is interesting to watch? And I think that what's going to happen is that it's going to go in all directions at the same time. But my sense is that we will get bored of AI imagery and AI shit much faster than you realize. And that reality or the credibility of the Japanese shape show will still be interesting to us because it's real humans. Or what was that crazy fucked up thing with where they had the guns and the
Squid Game?
Squid Game.
Yeah.
It's Squid Game shit, but real will get interesting to some segment of people. And then there's this stuff of hey,
so what does this mean for AI? What is the play your thesis to the end? So
I just don't think. I think my whole thing on AI for a long time has been it is a super useful enterprise tool and it's going to make our ads sweet and make certain platforms a lot of money. But from a massive social impact, everything changed perspective, it's a big nothing burger, right?
But what about the writers, Sam? I get your point about the actors maybe and real humans on screen, but if you AI assisted writing for these screenplays,
it's not that good. I think what's going to happen is that
I think that this is really real. It really isn't that good. I think that we really overshot what it's capable of today.
To be clear, some of us did not overshoot what it was capable of, and was saying this from day one. In the I told you so.
We'll give you that.
Right? It's fine. It's a really nice little patch. It's really good for entity extraction. It's really good for ad targeting. It's really good for coming up with 1,000 variants of something so you can just test your way to the right. There are things that it's good for. It's great for drug discovery. There are things that AI is very impactful for.
Well, the other thing here,
change the world thing.
The other thing to say is that this is a typical technology cycle, right? These things always start off very hot. And then there's a lot of work to do to make them really, really good.
This is happening within weeks. I mean, it's fast. Yeah. It's just, I agree with that, David. It's just very sped up.
Yeah, usually the VCs are not writing off their stupid ass investments in the same quarter as they made them.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. Yeah.
I mean, I think that's that's the interesting, there's an overarching macro point here, which is that somehow Silicon Valley has forgotten that these technologies get invented and then we have usually very long, we're talking 5-year periods of time where there's a lot to figure out and a lot to build. And it takes 5 to 10 years to build out one of these cycles. It doesn't just happen in a quarter. And people are talking as if it should have happened, in a quarter's time.
Well, here's the problem. What else are VCs going to invest in? They're not going to invest in crypto. Enterprise is interesting but boring and expensive.
Good businesses.
But how much money do good businesses need? If they're good businesses, they don't need a lot of money.
That's fair.
Yeah. So I think that's undoubtedly fueling the hype, which even the investors who can recognize it are still spending. But I think it's fascinating because there's so many unresolved questions, right? The copyright issue, training, completely unresolved.
Thing is the copyright thing, which again, I will just because I have to say this has been my thing from day one is this is a disaster for OpenAI because they basically everything is stolen, right? And it's basically my view is that most of the AI stuff people are using right now, it is valuable, but it's mostly valuable because it's information laundering, right? And that actually is quite valuable, right? So it's useful. If it's available, you should use it because it's pretty good for that. But that copyright stuff, I do think you're seeing. I'm happy to see the Sarah Silverman stuff. more and more litigation coming. These guys are going to get buried.
She's suing OpenAI, or I'm trying to remember.
And everyone. Everyone's going to get buried
all
in
of Hollywood is this, right?
Every author is like basically suing.
They should. I mean, this is,
Yeah, the thing, and I haven't followed it minutely, but I think there are so many AI-related issues wrapped up in the Hollywood issues, right? Because there's sort of copyright over voice, likeness, 3D stuff. There's also saying, like, to Netflix, you can't use AI in production, right? And Netflix is like, well, all those like thumbnails that show you 17 versions of the Bridgerton people, so you think you haven't watched Bridgerton, right? Like, that's AI. And so I'm sure the people on the front lines are parsing some of this, although, so I think there's a lot wrapped up in it too. And I do think AI I think of it as spell check on steroids. I would not write an article without spell check. And in the future, I think there's a lot of writing and content where some kind of AI-based tools would not be part of it. And I don't think Hollywood should be trying to stop that, because
there's this huge question, which is, wow, we saw this extraordinary new technology, right? Like, I think that's the cool thing, is we saw this glimpse of something that was like, whoa, this is a really powerful... You mean
through like chatbots, or like what knocks your socks off?
Large language models in general, through the lens of this transformer implementation, show this like really powerful possibility, okay? But the problem is we have this input problem where all the content, like Sam says, is coming from sources which are dubious at best. And then you have this other problem, which there's starting to be studies coming out the last 2 weeks, which say, well, we've used all of the text generated by humans, and it's not enough. And I was saying this several episodes ago, that if you actually get into the math of this, we don't have enough text available to us.
I thought
in
you were saying that
form.
D'Angelo said that we do, and
no.
we've only
No. I was.
D'Angelo is the Quora founder who's now working on Poe to help people build AI bots.
I wasn't talking about anything D'Angelo said, although he's saying a lot of smart things, but like, I was just purely looking at the math of like, the scale that these systems get to.
That they're making their own training data now, isn't this?
Yeah, but there's studies that came out even in the last 2 weeks that show that it really doesn't work. And so I think there's this bigger question, which is these AI systems need original content to feed off of. Who's going to make it, right? And that's like an interesting question.
The synthetic content is a place, I'm going to admit, in a rare moment of weakness, that I've never really fully understood this, because it's not just this stuff.
Well, the science proves you right, for what it's worth.
Well, and this is the thing where everyone's always been, and this goes way before AI, being like, oh, don't worry, we can create synthetic data sets to like augment our data and then improve. And from a first principles perspective, it's never made sense to me. These people are smart, and I guess maybe there's something I'm missing. I've always given it the benefit of the doubt, like just because very smart people like this stuff.
Nope.
And I can
always a great formula to suspend judgment and reality.
As you said at my birthday party, Jess, I always give people the benefit of the doubt, and or someone else said, but
that was me.
Good.
We're turned on that toast.
GPT helped her write it. Don't worry.
No.
I think this is the place where, like, I think there probably are places it's true. Like maybe in physics simulations, you can give it first principles and say, "Hey, come up with a bunch." But like, this idea that AI is going to train itself. This goes back to my whole like, is large language models, is it asymptoting already, or is it the first bump and it's going to help us discover the next bump and the next bump and the next bump and then eat all of humanity? And I've always been very vocally skeptical of the latter. I think we're kind of S-curved it out. I think it's useful, but like, I will dance on the grave of this generation of overhype.
Oh my. What but you got to be careful counting these things out. I remember distinctively Android was like delayed, and I think it was delayed, and I had been covering Google, and I interviewed Andy Rubin, and I was like, how do you feel like your thing is never going to work? And like, I was obviously wrong. Android worked. So it's timelines are very hard.
Well, just to that point, this whole llama thing, can somebody explain to me what's going on with llama and all of this and why it caused a 20% bump in Microsoft stock yesterday? Like,
ooh, I'm into this topic actually, Dave. So I'd be happy to unpack this.
I literally don't understand because, like, you know,
the one thing that Facebook, open source model.
Yeah, but like, okay, just explain it to me because I don't get it.
No, I think it's interesting, and this is a little bit in the weeds, right? But Facebook has taken, again, this open source approach to competing with OpenAI and many others. And then their announcement was all like, we're delighted to announce with Microsoft. And so my first instinct was like, oh man, this is some Microsoft PR. Like,
I was going to say, it's all Microsoft PR. It's all the Microsoft playbook.
Well, Microsoft has invested $13 billion into OpenAI. So,
well, can we rephrase that? Microsoft has invented 0.01% of their market, a day's volatility. Let's not get too excited.
Okay, it's fine. But net, I think it's just like kind of a marketing thing. Meta and Microsoft have a very big cloud partnership across multiple products. And I think when you have those kinds of partnerships, you like give your partner a nod as like your, primary partner or something like that. The reality is anyone can use the technology. I don't think like Microsoft salespeople are going to be like pushing it or anything really like that. So I think it's kind of insignificant in big picture, other than frankly to expose like the huge cloud and like enterprise partnership relationship between Meta and Microsoft that may manifest in other ways. But it's I also wonder if Microsoft's thinking, look, we have this financial investment in OpenAI. I think the regulators are going to come knocking. I mean, we saw today the FTC, which has suffered regulatory setbacks with Microsoft Activision appearing to go forward, came out anyway and said, we're tightening the rules on M&A. And they release things that are going to look at like PE roll-ups. Some of these strategic investments are probably more in the crosshairs. So I think also Microsoft can now say, oh, but we're also partnering with so-and-so. So I think that's part of it. But
let's just bear in mind a few things. One is, I actually think the open strategy for AI is the right strategy, especially for someone like Meta. Meta's going to make a fucking fortune on AI, right? It's the most obvious place where the technology that actually exists is going to give a real boost.
How? Through ad targeting?
They must have one of the largest unique data sets of human text in the world.
Well, and just setting that point aside, like if you're Meta, you don't give a shit who actually runs the AI. All you want is better targeted ads, right? And so like as version 1, we can talk about the long-term thing and other things, but like very basically, they're going to crush it on it.
So same is true for Google and Alphabet, right?
Totally. They basically just want better ads, right? And like this is like a straight up the middle use case for it.
I don't know if the same is true for Google and Alphabet. They depend so much on open web content that like if suddenly
right.
all of the open web content takes a nosedive, like that chart that we were sharing on our thread showing Stack Overflow's drop off over the last 2 quarters, like that puts Google in a precarious position.
Yeah, that's a good point, Dave. That is a very good point. Is that you think about data and distribution of the two? Google has distribution, but not proprietary data really.
Whereas
Facebook
Meta does.
Both. YouTube.
Yeah, YouTube's a lot of great stuff for them. Yeah. The basic point is like they just want this shit to win, and there's some pretty big optionality in it winning, and like it's great for it to be open. The other thing that's keep in mind is like there's no company that's gonna be able to defend this stuff. Right, like it's because of the lawsuits, because of like the thing. If you basically try to own this technology, you're putting a big target on yourselves, and you're gonna get crushed. Whereas I think there's a lot of stuff you say, it's open source. I mean, it's actually very much like encryption, right? Like early encryption. There's this whole thing about is early encryption exporting arms internationally, and so people would print encryption formulas on T-shirts and walk across borders and be like, "What are you gonna fucking arrest me for? What's on my T-shirt?" Like you can't lock down something that's that straightforward in a lot of ways. So I think the more open it is, the more likely it is to survive, right? Whereas the more people try to like own it and control it in a single place, they're just going to get completely eviscerated by so many lawsuits that'll drive you nuts. And like, I just think that it's the right strategy to therefore be open with it if you want it to see the future.
This is probably a good point to remind people that the information has reported that OpenAI has been working on an open source version. So
really,
I think we have not.
Job information.
Yes.
Oh, I didn't see that.
They've been working on it.
They
may not do it. They may not do it, but it's definitely been in the works. So
what's there to say about that OpenAI? There have been a few papers that came out the last 2 days that suggest that GPT-4 is actually dramatically, I mean, we're talking 80% less effective.
Yeah.
And so there's clearly something going on.
Than 3.5?
No, than 4.0 in March.
Oh, it's just it's dying.
It's
The
dying.
engagement, you mean?
No, the
like the
effectiveness
quality.
of
the actual effectiveness
the
of
actual
quality?
quality. Yeah. And it particularly
We
around
always
code.
assume these things would get smarter. What if they make themselves dumber? Now that's a twist.
I want to ask a question to the crowd, which is, I feel like a macro level, the internet is just so janky right now and getting jankier. If that's a good term I can use.
Millennial world.
Thank you.
Brett.
I hope all the Gen Zers are listening to me right now.
That's a millennial term,
If
Britt,
you
not
could
a Gen Z
rewind
term.
15 years ago, Sam, I'll start with you. Like, what one thing would you have done that could have changed the future of the internet?
Oh, interesting. 15 years ago, I feel like I had my 10 years to actually fucking fix it and failed. And it's one of my great missed opportunities, which is I actually think almost exactly 15 years ago, Facebook actually had an opening to get identity right. Right. And there's basically two things that have been broken about the internet from inception. One is identity, right? And there's a long story about why there's not an identity protocol built into the lowest level of the internet.
We tried.
The second that thing that was built, that was broken from day one, was the economics of it, right? Which is like, and the economics.
Sam, you and I have uniquely both two eras of work on this, you know?
So almost exactly 15 years ago, I went to Facebook, was the first ever person leading the identity product group, which I created, right? Specifically to try to make, take a run at effectively getting identity right on the internet. My old joke, even from that era, people remember, is I was like, we always go around like, what company should we buy? I was like, the DMV. Like, let's just acquire the DMV, right? And like, to me, the fact that in the earliest days of Harvard Facebook, which Jess and I experienced from day zero, like you actually did have bootstrap strong identity, and that people forget that the reason Facebook originally worked from day zero was because everyone did not trust the internet, would not post a photo, would not use real names, and then inside the Harvard enclave originally, right, bootstrapping
and all of the
.edu.
All of the .edu enclaves.
Well, but it started with specific schools. People were like, oh shit, I actually trust my fellow classmates. Therefore, I'm going to use a real name and post real statuses and build real friendships. And you had bi-directional friendship connections and like all this strong identity shit. And then for a whole bunch of reasons, that started going in a different direction. And there was an opening, I believe, with a lot of goodwill and growth, like 15 years ago, to go back and try to get that right? And like get to a point where you had trusted, socially validated real identity online at scale, which I think would have fixed a lot. Not everything, because you still have an economics problem, right? Which is the economics of the internet are fundamentally about attention, not truth. And so that's a separate thing. But I actually think that there are two things to fix. And like I failed, I think, actually, for a whole bunch of interesting reasons to get the identity piece done, even though it was very obvious at the time that it needed doing.
You see it playing out in Threads, right? Like, there's all these new people coming on. I don't know if the identities are valid. Like, we're just sitting here going through it all over again.
Not a social network. Not a social network.
Well,
okay, guys, I think we have to move to our final segment of the pod, which is the week's debate. So I would propose that we dig back into the strike. So are we more strike or less strike? Dave, we know where you are. You're clearly more strike.
More strike.
All the
Keep
way.
going. Don't stop.
Britt, what about you?
I'm holding true to my name, Jess, and I am more strike, 100%.
You are more strike. Sam?
I just want more of the Japanese TV show with the fucking things like that. So is that strike or no?
But he
strike?
is less AI porn. I want that to be documented.
Well, I just think it's boring already.
Here's the only thing I want to say about that, Sam. For men's porn, I get why that's boring. Women need like storytelling and all kinds, and so like AI hasn't yet incepted that vein of porn.
Oh, so the 50 Shades of AI porn?
Yeah, that doesn't exist yet.
But do you think that's going to come from professional writers, or do you think it'll be the AI that will deliver your 50 Shades of Brit porn?
I don't care. Did you know my dad listens to this podcast? He told me
he does now.
So I'm going to plead the fifth now. Okay. Just your answer.
Okay, I got it. I am definitely in favor of the strike based on what I know. I do worry, though. I think these things completely suck, to state the obvious. And I don't think that if I understand what the actors and the writers are really asking for now, I don't think that that's going to make sense in this technology future. And so I am for a very, very quick resolution to this thing, but I think it's just not going to end well. And like the consequences of this and like all the people who are affected by it, it's quite sad. So I think we've got to like have a commitment to move through it as fast as possible.
Yeah, and we didn't talk about a lot of the underlying other business dynamics at play here. We're pretty focused on the AI component. So we didn't do it justice.
Saying they want to share in streaming profits, which I think is pretty funny because there really are not streaming profits.
Well, I think that's the whole thing that we didn't talk about, right? Like we didn't talk about the real underlying business change that's driving this.
Yeah,
and also I think and we can just like these businesses are messy. They say they don't get residuals. Netflix does play some residuals. It's pennies. I mean, I don't know. They're just a totally different model. Shonda Rhimes getting hundreds of millions of dollars. There's probably like more to unpack, but like this doesn't get resolved by like, I don't know how it gets resolved. I think it gets resolved in the course of like building new models that reward talent in better ways, so.
And Harry and Meghan can give back their whatever it was. The deal they got.
Spotify, Harry and Meghan.
That's where the money went.
Oh yeah, it's all with Harry and Meghan.
This maybe comes to the final.
This is a geopolitical war.
Our good, our segment towards the end, which is like interesting things we've seen, each week.
Oh yeah.
And it also ties into this conversation. We went to why I'm wearing this hat, the Dude Perfect live experience down at the SAP Center in San Jose last week. And I went into it thinking that, I really like the Dude Perfect guys. I think they're one of the best creators on the internet. And our kids just absolutely love them. And I went into it thinking this is going to be something that's great for kids, but not great for adults. And it was way better than I expected.
We were kind of tight on time, but quickly, what does one do at the Dude Perfect experience?
I think that it's
compared to Taylor Swift. No,
the actor that is in our more or less back channel said something akin to this when we were talking about this AI writer's strike issue, which he said, I think that the live experience is going to become, ever more important. And so seeing this Dude Perfect thing, I mean, the stadium was completely packed full, like to the brim. Kids were like losing their minds. It was like they were seeing the Beatles. And really what they did is they took all of their segments that, people really do love on their YouTube channel and they turned them into live experiences. And I legitimately enjoyed it. I mean, it was kind of like a kids WWF situation, or MMA, kids MMA. It was just like,
oh God, I was hoping we'd get through this episode without MMA.
No, the point is real world, real human is on the rise as AI.
Totally. I mean, Taylor Swift has lifted the economy. I read a study. Yes. It's official. Okay, Dave, that's a good one to end on. You guys can all Google it. And to live experiences, we say, as we've taken not seeing each other in person to have dinner and instead recorded a podcast. So we're going in the opposite direction. But we are glad you're all here with us. Thank you to everyone listening. Please share the word, give us reviews. It's been so fun getting feedback. Thanks to our back channel. And we'll see you here next week. Have a good one.
Thanks, guys.